Hello and welcome back to the Witch Source. And I have back with me Anne Renata with Frightfully Good to share some of their best experiences for our Halloween season here as we get near Samhain and the thinning of the veil. So I thought it would be fun to have them share their experiences. So um, I've heard that one of a good one to start with actually took place in Romania.
Yeah, we've actually traveled all around the world trying to find the spookiest locations and stay in haunted hotels. And this one was with a tour with Dave Schrader, who is a well-known TV ghost hunter. And one of the castles we went to was called Corvin Castle. It's
Corvin
also
Castle.
called Hunadora Castle in Romania. And we had a very brief amount of time to actually investigate. We started off with an amazing feast, which was in one of the towers, and we had local performers coming in and playing their instruments and singing, and had the best time. And then we got that very precious small amount of time to investigate, didn't we?
Mm-hmm. Yep. In between, we were told a whole lot of ghost stories there. We had done a podcast episode on the castle itself, so we sort of knew a little bit about it. And it's enormous. It's an enormous, beautiful castle. It is open to the public, very, very regal. And we wanted to have this moment in time to really go and explore, especially since they said they had a bear pit.
I was keen for the bear pit.
The bear pit, where they would put people in for the bears to eat them as torture.
And fun.
And fun, yes, as the Romanians do. We were travelling the track of Dracula, right? So Dracula all through Transylvania, right? So
Vlad the Impaler.
we had gone to that sort of that end of Romania. And in between time, we thought, well, there's another thing that we want to do. We want to try and see if we can connect with the other side, if we can sort of do some work there. And so we ended up going into this one little room that had a nice big table. And we thought we might do some glass dowsing. So if anyone hasn't heard of glass dowsing, you've probably seen it on TV, where people are sitting around like in a seance style, and they have their finger on a glass, and the glass starts to be pushed or moved through energy that gets connected as we open up to the spirit world. And so we've gone in there with, two other people, whatever. Oh, we'll only be here for a few minutes and then we'll go on. Let's just test. I mean, none of us speak Romanian. I speak Polish, which can be close sometimes. You can kind of get a little bit of an understanding. And so we've put our fingers on the glass and we've started, and all of a sudden it starts doing these really wonderful and wild things. And when did Our Lady come in?
There was one of our tour guide, who was an archaeologist historian, who had told us some of the stories of the castle. She was curious about what we were doing, and we invited her to come and join us. And she spoke the language. So with that, she sat at the table with us. Glass starts going around, and she said, "I've got a question. We have a skeleton here in the castle of a princess, and her head is missing. She was beheaded as punishment because some horrid king that was there, and somebody stole her skull, her head." She said, "Can I ask the spirits where her skull or her head is?" So I said, "Sure." Anyway, she starts asking questions in Romanian, and the table starts to answer her. We had no idea what was going on, so therefore we can't influence the outcome of what's
So
happening.
it's answering in yes or no,
Yes.
right? Yes or no. So we had a position on the table for yes, a position on the table for no. And she's going off in Romanian and she's getting yes, no, yes. And she's not telling us anything. So we're kind of going, what's going on? We don't even know. Why is it going to yes? Why is it going to no? And she said, hold on, hold on, hold on. She's keep asking these questions until she gets to this point of going, right. And so we have now said, okay, what was all of that about?
Yeah. And she said, "I've been asking, was the head taken from the castle? Yes. Was it in the near vicinity?" And it was saying yes. And I said, "Well, let's try spelling out the name of the town where it is." And so it spelt out this word that we couldn't recognize. And she's gone, that's only 5 miles from here. That is quite a strong possibility. That town was there at the time of this incident. It's a strong possibility that that is correct.
Yeah.
And we're like, look, I've got goosebumps just telling the story. That was unbelievable.
And so then we wanted to see the skeleton of the princess, and also
Yeah.
go see the bear pit. And then they came around and said, we have to go now. Sorry.
Time's up.
Time's up. So
But still, that experience was
yeah.
worth it.
So we spent probably about 40 minutes doing this work at the table. She was totally dumbfounded because she'd never had the experience with glass dowsing before. She came to it as a very big skeptic, and was very astounded at what we connected with very, very quickly, and the information that was coming back. So that was a really awesome, awesome experience.
We've actually in the Czech Republic, we were doing table tipping there as well. That was what was that castle? Hushka?
Hushka Castle.
Hushka Castle, which is supposedly there is a pit to hell in the middle of the castle, which of course they built a chapel over the top of.
As you do.
As you do. And we were doing some table tipping upstairs in one of the upper levels. And again, this was another Dave Schrader tour. We like Dave. Hi, Dave. And he had asked us to do it because he'd seen Renata doing the table tipping before. And we blew a few minds there as well. So table tipping is where you lay your hands on the table lightly and you ask the table to rock to one side or another, and then you can start to ask questions like yes or no. The table will say this is this side for yes, and the table will rock that side. No's the other side, and sometimes it will spin. Sometimes it will go sliding across the floor. We didn't have one of the tables we'd like to normally use at this particular castle. It was a heavy, heavy iron table. It's not something that somebody could easily manipulate and push around or do anything with. And Renata started speaking in Polish to the whoever was there from the Czech Republic, and they seemed to be responding. And the next minute, you know, she's skating off after this table across the floor with all these American people chasing after her with their fingers on the table going, what the hell is happening? And yeah, there was a few minds that just went that day.
Yeah, at the end of the session, we asked the table to put itself back to where it was found, because one of the gentlemen that was there went searching for the table, an appropriate table, and to bring it in. And so right at the end, the table's gone off and through the door and out to an outside area, and placed itself back in the place where it was when that gentleman went to find it and bring it in, which is extraordinary as well, because we hadn't seen where he had bought it from.
No.
So that was cool.
Wow. What was that's crazy. What was the when you were talking to the spirit in Poland, what were they responding with?
It was very much just asking about, and again, I allowed the people around the table to ask the questions. So they were asking questions there, and I was just focused on directing the energy and keeping the connection going. So I was just sort of kind of in the background trying to interpret the questions and getting yes and no responses from the table. And for a lot of these people, all they were wanting was to be in that moment where this extraordinary thing where you have an inanimate object, a metal, an iron table, move, number one,
Right.
and create a vibration within itself, and then actually stand up on two legs or twist around or move all of us, 5 people who have their hands on the table, go around frantically in a circle or head down the corridor. So yeah, sometimes it isn't as much about the question as it is about what the hell is going on in this moment and why is this inanimate object seemingly moving when we just have our fingers on the top of it. And so they were
Yeah.
really enjoying this whole process, which was great. I honestly can't remember the questions. It
And I
was
had gone
Right.
at that stage.
it
I
was
took
so
the
long ago.
opportunity to run away and go do something else. I'm horrible.
People were actually recording it, so it's probably online
Yeah, there's
somewhere.
video
Yeah,
somewhere.
but yeah, so that was really awesome. We get
Okay, so I have to ask the question because I'm sure it will be asked. Did you find that hell was at the bottom of the pit? Did they ever anything confirm that that may or may not be
Well,
there?
the story goes that when they first found it, they were trying to find out what was at the bottom of the pit. So they actually had some prisoners there. They lowered somebody into the pit, trying to find where the bottom was and what was down there. And they say, are you okay? Are you okay? Next minute, they heard unearthly screaming going on. So they've quickly pulled him back up, and the man had turned white and could no longer speak. So whatever he'd seen down there had terrified him. Whether that's true or not, or that's grandma telling tales to frighten the kids, I don't know. I wasn't there at the time. It was the 1600s or something. Yeah, but it's
Yeah, this particular castle is quite legendary. It's in a very interesting spot, surrounded by forest. And the villagers for a very long time around it had many myths and legends about the creatures that would come out of this pit at night and terrify the area. And so it was very well known for hundreds of years as being some sort of a hell hole, literally, where creatures that were half human and half animal would appear at night and then go back down into this hole during the day. So if you look at the castle itself, it's built in a square around this hole, and so it's very much something that looks like it's protecting whatever is on the inside sorry, and not what's on the outside wanting to come in. It's whatever is on the inside that wants to come out. And now they have bricked it
Mhm.
all over. And as Anne said, they've built a chapel around that with an altar that sits literally on top of where the hole is. So you cannot get into it.
we did
Um,
have some people lay down and put their ear on the slab to try and see if they could hear anything, but sadly, no.
no.
That's an interesting place to put an
There was also an
altar.
alchemist that
Yes.
was up there at one stage, and he was
Yes.
trying to discover the elixir of youth. But the villagers thought that he was someone evil, and therefore they came up there and killed him.
Yes. Yes.
You do, and it was so strong, this belief of some magical entity in there, that even the Nazis took over the castle and tried to tap into whatever that energy was and develop their occult weapons
Mm.
of destruction to
To
try and
try and
win
win the
World War
war.
Two.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's got an incredible history.
Wow. Yeah, and it sounds like there was a lot of energy available there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Hmm. What's another good one?
Well, we've been to Chillingham Castle, which is in the northern part of England, just before you get to Scotland. Sorry,
Hmm.
my dog's just come over and decided to say hello. Uh, and yeah, that was, you tell the story about that one. I might just pop him outside because he might need to use the bathroom. Go for it, Renata.
Yeah, so Chillingham Castle is this, again, amazing castle that looks like it is a movie set, and I'm sure it has been many a time during its lifetime. And it sits very much on the borderlands between England and Scotland. And of course, there was a lot of fighting for many hundreds of years between the clans and England trying to take over everywhere. And so it is battle worn and a very bloodied area with lots of history and lots of energy. And Chillingham Castle has been known to be or have been a part of some of those wars, and some very, very horrible things have happened inside its stone walls. And we had the opportunity to stay overnight in one of the big rooms in the castle itself, known as the Lady Grey Room. And there were two families
Mhm.
that originally built the castle. It was originally created as sort of like a monastery, a place of healing for priests and monks. It was kind of enlarged over the years. Two families took over, they took residence there, entertained a lot of people after all of the wars and everything were over. And it's sort of obviously still standing, still sort of it's kind of a national trust building now, so it's open to the public during the day. Paranormal investigators can come in and stay overnight and do investigations because it's known to be
And let me just say, the rooms are not cheap.
very haunted. Yes, they're not cheap.
Very expensive. But luckily, we've got a very strong Patreon community that support us, so they helped us get a room for the night.
Yes, unfortunately, the night that we were there, we realised that there was another paranormal group there, a paranormal group from another country that has a very large following. And they, at that point in time, would do lives because I followed them sometimes because they were always on. Every night they were investigating. Every night they were doing lives.
And every night they'd find a demon.
Every night, every night. And so we were out at one moment of the evening in the courtyard, which is beautiful. It's sort of very much is this four-sided area where, you know, we were just reaching out. We had a couple of our gadgets out. We were just reaching out quietly, just sitting there to see what happened. And all of a sudden we hear this noise from the background. And it's that particular group coming in to the same area. Now, I don't know whether they didn't know we were there because we were sitting there quietly. It was just Anne or myself. But they started to talk about their cameras and the lights would come on and the lights would come on and stream across the courtyard and they'd be so loud and they'd be trying to set up.
Presenting to camera.
Yeah, then they were trying to set up the best areas and we're sort of just sitting there going, hello.
Excuse me.
We're here too.
We're here.
We have also paid for the night. And they literally just took over. I think at one stage they did realise that we were there. It didn't stop them, unfortunately.
They did try to interview Renata, which was hilarious. We introduced who we were, Australian Paranormal Investigators, on their live stream, and they've gone, oh, so you're a medium, you're a psychic. What are you picking up on, Renata? What do you feel here? She's gone, nothing, and she's walked off. It sort of ruined the moment for us because we're more gentle when we're on our own. We realise that these are people. They had lives. We can't judge what they did to a certain extent in their time frame because there was different ways of doing things. What they would have done then would be horrific now. We would never do it, but you can't judge people on what they've done back then. You can just try to understand. And yeah, so this team came in and just really bumped us off to the side, and this one took her bat and ball, went home, and I just went, right, well, I'm going to collect all my equipment now. But we did have an experience that night.
But let me just say, the best bit of it was they went over to an area that has the
dungeon.
The dungeon, yeah, it has all the torture equipment in it. And they started talking live to camera how this was the dungeon and horrible things that happened in here and all of this sort of stuff. And yet during the day we had done the tour and we knew that that was never the dungeon. It was just the place where they put those things there now because it's easy to get to.
Replicas.
It's easy to get to the tourists to go there than actually go down through the castle and find the actual area where the dungeon is. And you kind of go, please, people, do your research beforehand because, you know. But, yeah. So.
Oh, God.
But, yes, we were staying in the Lady Grey suite. Now, Lady Grey was well known for her blend of tea, which is known as Earl Grey, and that's still very popular today. And Renata had her friend who had come to stay with us for a short period during this holiday, so they were off in the other room with the two beds, and I was in the big room with a big king-size four-poster bed all to myself. You'd be surprised how many haunted locations do not have two beds in the room. They just have one bed, so we're forever having to share. Anyway, I got into bed and I wanted to have an experience. So I sort of said to myself, and to whoever was in the room.
Sounds very bad, Anne, what you just said, but never mind.
Okay. You've turned into the grotty one now, have you? Okay, fair enough. I said, I would like to know about you being here. If you want to make your presence known to me tonight and let me know in some way or other, I'd really appreciate it. So feel free. And I also sort of put the caveat in, you don't have permission to harm me, just make your presence known. Because I think a lot of this work comes down to the permissions you give to them, and you've got to be very specific. So I went to bed, and partway through the night, I sort of woke up a little bit and felt like there was someone in the room. And then I felt the other side of the bed next to me sort of weight down to the point my body sort of rolled towards it a bit. And I thought, that's somebody on the other side of my bed. So I've sort of rolled over and sat up and had a look, and there was no one there. And I just sort of said, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming to show me that. Um, I now will ask you to leave uh, because I need to get some sleep. I'm driving the car tomorrow, but I really do appreciate you coming to make yourself known to me. So that was very cool.
We were in New Forest during one of our trips
Yes.
overseas as well. And New Forest is a region of England, which
England is so magical in so
quite
many ways.
interesting because they allow horses to run free there. So there are horses that are sort of born on the New Forest or in the New Forest area, and they're looked after once a year by people who come in and will just make sure they're healthy. They get all their shots and injections and whatever, but they roam free. So it's wonderful. You're walking along or you're driving along and this bunch of horses just comes up and through. They're always looking for food. You're not supposed to feed them, but people do.
They've got right of way as well. You are not allowed to touch the horses. You're not allowed to shoe them on. You have to wait till they're done.
Yeah. And so very old English sort of stuff going on there with that.
It's something to do with a thank you to the horses who helped the region survive when they finished building or whatever it was they were doing. They let the horses loose, and that was the rule from there on, that the horses were allowed to roam free. And they take care of them.
It's a very witchy part of England as well. They've got some fabulous witchy shops there. But we were in a very old pub. We were staying in a very old pub because we try and find haunted places wherever we go so we can stay there. And we were in this one room this particular night, went to sleep. There's nothing really happening. And I get woken up in the middle of the night. And, of course, again, we're sharing a bed. And I look up at the wall and there are these two pillars of light that are on the wall, projected on the wall. And I'm looking at them, and then all of a sudden the larger pillar, the taller pillar of light goes through the wall. And I go, that's interesting, in my semi-state of sleep, right? And I'm thinking, that's weird. Am I really awake and am I seeing this? The other pillar is just standing there for a minute, but then it also goes through the wall. And I go, wait a minute, I did see that. And I get up because there is a window on the right-hand side of us. It's open to give us fresh air. And I've gone to the window to see if there is any light that can be projected from there. Absolutely nothing. Pitch black. It's about 4 o'clock in the morning. I go into the bathroom, which is on the other side of where the bed is, and there's no light on there, whatever. And I just kind of look and I go...
And we backed onto bushland, so
Yes.
there was or forest. There was no road or anything for car headlights to be coming past.
Yeah, and I've kind of gone, there's no way that light could have been created at all. And it was bright, brilliant light that was an internal light. So it didn't bleed out into the room. It just glowed within itself, these two pillars of light. And I went, oh, that was really nice. I went back to sleep. Didn't wake her up at all. And then in the morning I said, Anne, I've had this really awesome experience last night. So instead of enjoying
to share.
Instead of enjoying the story, she kind of goes, why did you not wake me up? I said, well, it probably took all of 10 seconds maybe to have happened. So it's profound for me.
It
But
was just
yes,
for you. It was
it
meant for
was.
you.
It was awesome. It was really, really
I'm going to
awesome.
take my Biscoff biscuits
Sorry.
now. Back now. Can't have any.
So that was awesome. That was a good experience.
But one of the problems with England is we became quite addicted to these.
Oh, I do love
Oh,
those.
oh, yes. It's a special
Me
treat now.
too.
Yeah. We've been to quite a number of places in England that have been really quite fascinating. We went to a place called Derby Jail, which is now at the bottom of an apartment block. It's kind of really unbelievable that this sits on the base of a huge apartment building, and they are now building an apartment block in front of it as well, so it will be surrounded. But originally, it was a prison that sort of extended through where the fence line now is, and it sat very much under sort of just one story buildings. And it dates back to the 1800s. And it was a place where they would put prisoners before they executed them. Or they were waiting to go to court, because court wasn't always held like every week. It would be held when a judge could be available and was coming around, and so sometimes people had to wait 2 weeks, 2 months, a year before a judge would appear, and in that time they had to fend for themselves inside this courthouse, inside this jail. The jail was quite small. It had sort of an area where prisoners could eat and be visited, but they had little jail cells as well. And the fascinating thing about the jail cells was that the prisoners took time to actually engrave symbols and their names and things into the doors, which are still there. So you could read sometimes the story of people's lives. If they were going to be hanged, they would have a hangman and their name underneath. On the door, there were many witch symbols on the
Oh,
door,
witch marks. Yep.
protective symbols that people placed. There were names and dates there as well. And so it was fascinating to look at the storyboard, literally, of some of the people who had spent time in this jail. And of course, the conditions for them were quite horrendous. It was really, really terrible. And we booked a night to stay there and sort of just have the experience of being in there, and just being witness to all of this, and to see whether we could get some activity. It wasn't terribly active that night, but we had a really awesome night there, because it's one of those really unique places where you can go and spend time.
I think because we are very logical, uh, we will go to the true cause of what is creating so-called phenomena. You'll see on YouTube and the TV shows, they always jump to the conclusion that everything is a ghost, and every single thing that comes through a paranormal device or tool is genuine communication, and it's not.
And that
It's
everything's
very rare.
demonic. Everything's a
Oh,
demon at
demons
the
everywhere.
moment. Demons are in for the last kind of year and a half. It's all about the demons and getting rid of the demons, and how wonderful the paranormal investigators are. They never really talk about expelling the demons. It's just that they know the demons are there, which is kind of like, so you've walked away and you've left all of that.
And the poor old witches also get a hammering
Oh,
all the way
don't
through.
they just? My goodness.
My eyes have rolled back so hard, I'm surprised I can see forward anymore. I did have a funny experience here in our hometown of Newcastle, where we were at a cemetery out at West Wall's End. And this was very early in my ghost hunting career, where we would go to cemeteries because there was nowhere else we could go. And I had gone in. We always get to the gate and we ask the guardian, may we come forward and come onto the property tonight? And we'd enter and we go do our stuff. But the car park at the start of where this cemetery is always felt a bit funky. It felt a bit weird. And you'd feel like there was things that were watching you from the bush, because it was literally in the bush. It was quite far off.
Mm.
You had to go down a dirt track to get to it. So there was one stage I had to come back to the car to get something. So I've sort of left the cemetery, gone through the gate, and gone over to my car, opened up the back door, and I've stuck my head in, and my backside is sticking out of the car. And in my head, I'm thinking, please don't do anything to my backside, because I felt really weird that there was something just behind me. And I'm like, please don't do anything, please. I grabbed what I needed and got out and got back to the group. When I got home that night and I was getting ready for bed, putting my PJs on, I've dropped my jeans and I've gone, ow, what is that? I had a slice across my backside that was that long, a thin, like someone had got a scalpel or something and gone across my backside. I had jeans on with a belt. There was no tears in my jeans. There was nothing there. I have no idea how I got that, except for the moment I had my backside hanging out of the car saying, please don't do anything. And they did.
Mm. We have a few tours that we run here locally, and one of the most profound things that's happened recently is that we do a tour at a little village called Wallambai, which is about an hour and a half from where we live. And it's a very historic village. The middle of the village, which is only really a few stores and a church and everything, is still very much in that sort of look of the very late 1800s. So it's very pretty. People come out there for the weekend, but we do tours out there on occasion. And one of the last tours that we did, we had a few people there that were quite new, had never done this before. And this particular lady who this had happened to, she had never done this before. So she was very, very open. And we sort of went from one particular area. We had done some work in the little church that was there. And we walked across and we went into the old schoolhouse and did a session in the old schoolhouse. And as we were walking out, the lady noticed that she had these clingy black leggings on, which were very sort of skin tight. And she looked down, and there on the front of her black leggings was a tiny little child's handprint that we actually took a photo of, because it
Mm.
was like, how did that even get there? She didn't notice it. We made her put her hand down so that we could see that it wasn't her hand, that she may have just touched herself, didn't even know. The hand was the other way up anyway. But after being in the schoolhouse and after trying to engage with the children in the schoolhouse, she comes out with a tiny little handprint, like of a child maybe 7 or 8 years old, on her pants. She thought all her Christmases had come at once. She just became a total believer from that point in time. I said, "You will never wash those pants again, will you?" She says, "No, I'm going to frame them because this is amazing." So we all took photos and went, "This is a really, really awesome piece of evidence, I guess you could have gotten." There were many people who didn't believe. I mean, we put the photos up, and people came up with all of these responses. As someone else must have done it. You've got to be there at the moment to sort of know what was going on. So it's one of those moments that I can actually say this is something that I can't explain. It's wonderful, simply wonderful, but I can't explain it.
You didn't want to get a word in
That's
at any
awesome.
stage, did you?
You asked. You did ask.
We talk a lot.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's awesome that the spirit felt comfortable enough with her to do that.
Mm.
I mean, that's pretty incredible to me within itself, that child felt safe and comfortable enough to do that. So that's really awesome, actually. I think that's,
we,
forget what the naysayers say.
yeah.
Like, that's cool. That's really, like,
We also had
and
we had a new location that we'd started working in, but unfortunately they've closed down now, and it was part of Maitland Jail, and it's called The Residence. And we developed an experiment for that particular area. What we called it the sensory deprivation. So we'd put people into one room and we'd put them with blindfolds and headphones listening to white noise. Then we'd turn the lights off and leave them there. The rest of us would go into another room and we would be watching the CCTV camera to see what was happening in the room. And we would ask the spirits to do things to let us know that they were there. So it'd say, the person that is sitting on the end closest to the door, could you please go and touch them on the top of their head? Now, the people that were blindfolded in that room, we had said to them, if you feel anything, indicate it or let us know your emotion or what is going on. And lo and behold, we'd say, touch them on the head, and the person would be going, indicating they had been touched on the head. There were things like they'd do this to indicate they were feeling footsteps, and we had just said, could you please walk around the group and make them hear your footsteps? And sometimes it wasn't one, there'd be two or three of them that would be indicating that this was happening. We'd say, can you go and stand between these two people in the group? And both people, like, they would go like this, and the other person would be pointing at the middle as well. They're blindfolded. They can't see each other. This was really
Right.
profound because we couldn't influence them to feel
Yeah.
something in that area. It was completely blind to
Right.
them, and it was happening.
Mm. Yeah, the
That's awesome.
experiments are so much fun. They're really good.
One of
Uh,
my favorite things is to open people's eyes to the possibility of something else out there. I
mhm.
had led such a sheltered life being raised in Catholicism, and when my eyes were finally opened and I realized the trauma that that was creating, it gave me the inspiration to help other people open their eyes, not by forcing them, but just giving them situations where they could experience something that didn't quite fit the teachings of anything else.
Mm. And of course, you don't have to wait for night. That's,
No.
one thing for all of these things to happen. We do a lot of work during the day. We do work in people's homes whenever it is possible. So, if they've worked all day, obviously we can come in the evening. But sometimes the daytime is the only time that is available to see people. So we will go there. I remember before I was traveling with Anne, I was traveling with another friend who now lives in Scotland, and we stopped at this particular site along the road to Scotland that particular time we were there, and there was this castle on the side of the road, as it is in England and Ireland and everywhere. You're just driving along, and there's a big, mighty big castle. And we went through, and we'd had a long day, and I decided that I'd just sit down on a bench and just observe, look at the castle from the outside, because it wasn't all intact, but it was a beautiful sight to just sit there. And she went off because she decided that she would climb a tower and look at the view from the tower. And I said, no, I'm not doing that,
Good on
thanks.
you. Off you go.
And take a photo. And so I'm just sitting there minding my own business. And maybe I went into this little bit of a meditative mode. I don't know. I was just really enjoying the space. And then all of a sudden, right at the back, of course, there are these sort of doorways and things that you can see right through to the other side of the castle. Right at the back, I see this person walking past, and he is literally in a knight's outfit. So it looked like he
Armor.
had chain mail on, and one of those long coats that they would wear over the top. And he's just making his way across. And I've gone, oh, that's interesting. Hmm. I didn't make too much of it, because when we were leaving, I said to my friend, this is what I saw. When we were leaving, we went through the reception area in the shop, and I said, is there anyone here who may be dressed up today and sort of taking part in just being there in costume? And the lady looked at me very, very funnily, and she said, what did you see? And I mentioned what I saw, and she said, no, there is no one here dressed up today, and that person has been seen before. So this was middle of the day, and here is this knight walking along outside the castle in the middle of the daytime in a full body, and that was wild. That was interesting. Yeah,
That's really cool.
we've been to a fairy fort in Ireland as well. And there is a gentleman there who has his property open to people who want to come and
Oh, yes.
visit the fairies.
Pat Noon's
Pat
Fairy
Noon.
Farm.
And he will take you and he will talk to you about the fairy lore of Ireland. And he is an incredible storyteller. He will suck you in within 10 minutes of being there and make you believe everything. And so he took us out on his tractor, which is quite an interesting ride through the muddy grounds until you get to these spots. There's one spot where he has a fairy tree
Fairy Portal.
and a fairy portal. So one by one, you go up to where you are allowed to stand. You ask the fairies to show themselves to you, or you send them a blessing, and then you come back around. And then he also has a fairy fort on his site where he takes you to another place where it literally looks like there's a mound of earth that has been created hundreds of years ago. There are trees and everything, and there is a ring around it that has been sort of cut out of the ground. It looks like it has been stood upon by hundreds of people who have just made a track around the top part of the fort. And again, this is where the fairies come and they congregate and they have their meetings. And we left special gifts in the trees for the fairies. And that was one of those profound spiritual moments where it was so amazing to be there that we just could not leave.
No.
We ended up putting ourselves up against a huge tree that was just on the corner of this fairy fort and just laid back into that tree. And it was like the tree took away all of our worries, all of our needs for that particular time just disappeared. It was literally like the wind stopped, everything became quite silent. We were just in our moment of time, just being there, and it was like we were literally being healed by the
In the
energies that were
cocoon.
there. And it was just this most beautiful experience. And we all came there to begin with laughing and going, oh, this is just one of those Irish things we're going to do, and it's just going to be a whole lot of fun.
Oh, it was a lot of fun
It
as
was,
well.
but we actually left profoundly changed. So that was a really awesome experience, something very, very different.
We had another transformation while we were in Ireland as well. One of our friends was going through quite a bit of trauma, separating from a husband, and there was a lot of shenanigans and games being played by one side. And she was broken, so broken. He'd cut her off from all finances, and she'd paid for like 90% of the trip, and she wasn't going to be able to go. And I said, just get on the plane. We will make sure that you're fed while you're over there. It's okay. So we managed to get her on the plane, and we got to what's called St. Bridget's Well in Ireland. And she'd held herself together for so long. She was at breaking point, and she went and sat in a little alcove in the glen that's there. They've got a little river, and they've got wells where you can take the water. And she had a moment where Bridget, I'm sure, came and spoke to her, and all of a sudden, everything that had held her back and the emotional trauma of everything released, and she sat there sobbing and crying, and all the rest of us just sort of stood back and we let her be. We let happen what needed to happen, and she got back to Australia. She finished her course. She found herself a house for her and her dogs. She got a brand new job, and she got back on the path to become the best person she possibly can be. And I was ever so grateful for that moment of healing in that place.
We take everyone to Bridget's Well when we're
Oh,
in Ireland because we
there was
say
a whole heap of
you
nuns that
will,
got off there once. I
yeah,
wasn't real impressed.
you will just love it here. There's this beautiful statue of her. There is a running brook that runs through the little area there that
Cluties,
she's
everyone's putting their
in.
cluties up.
Cluties are up on the tree. So cluties are these little bits of material that people place their wishes into, and then they tie them to the
You
tree.
write them on.
And so the wind and the rain and the seasons take care of that material and destroy it. So when it is destroyed, naturally, that's when those blessings go up to the gods. And St. Bridget is very, very profound in Ireland, except that many of her sacred sites have now been turned into Catholic sites,
Christian sites.
Christian sites. So, but this particular well is really, really beautiful and
There's a
profound.
lot of appropriation going on over
Yeah,
there.
yeah. But it's beautiful.
Wow. Very cool. Very
Uh,
cool.
Yeah, so when we go to these places, we try and mix it up. So, yes, we do a lot of paranormal investigation, but we love to understand the deep pagan history of these places. So, we've been to Stonehenge, we've been to Newgrange, we've been to Avebury, where all the standing stones are, and there are some stones that you can actually touch. There are some stones that they will not allow you near. There are some that aren't so well known, which we've been to some of those places as well. But we try and take in the spiritual side of these countries too, because it's really important for us, we believe, to do that because of the energies that we continually work with. We've been to Glastonbury. I've climbed the Tor. You haven't. You're yet to do that. And these places that speak so much and connect with the spiritual side and the pagan side of the cultures that are there are really profoundly interesting and enlightening, and so many stories and things that you can learn. Plus, the shopping's fabulous if you like that sort of
And
stuff.
she likes it if there's a gift shop there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's a mixture of everything, which is it's great.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. And I love that you can take in and appreciate that side as well, because I think that's what I would probably be doing too.
Mm.
Um,
I think it's very grounding for us. It sort of gets us back into reality and gets us back into uh, just connecting through all of the centuries to all of these places, understanding that people were there thousands and thousands of years ago and built these things, which is amazing. Yeah.
And you think of like places like Lough Crew, which is an ancient burial ground in Ireland that is older than the pyramids. And you can go into it. Well, I think it's collapsed now, but all you had to do is go to the local shop, give them £10 or €10, and they'd give you the key. And you go back up there and you unlock it and you go in. And I could lay my hands on the carvings that were thousands of years old and understand that these people created this
Mm.
older than the pyramids. Then you lock it up and take the key back and get your €10 back.
wow.
Yeah, I
Wow.
know, right? They just and they take care of their castles, their abandoned abbeys and things. They make them safe and they allow you in.
Yeah.
Everything here in Australia is fenced off, the chains, and or you have to pay a lot of money to get in there. They're just like for the Irish. Oh yeah, it's another castle, or I've got a castle in my back paddock.
Just don't disturb the sheep. You're
Yeah,
right to go
yeah. We had
through.
a farmer that let us go through his paddock to get to one of the castles we were going to look at, and all the little calves were very interested in us, but they were terrified at the same time. So they'd sort of go and stand off at the distance and look at us, and they'd start to follow us when we'd walk off.
Too cool. So, one of the ones you had mentioned is Q Station.
Mm.
Mm.
Q Station Manly, which was formerly known as Quarantine Station. So this is one of the places in Sydney, Australia, where in the mid 1800s there was disease running rife in foreign countries, and people would come on the tall ships to get away from disease to start a new life here in Australia. But if they were ill, they were taken off the ships and placed into quarantine, which was 40 days of isolation, to
Mm.
see if they had any of these diseases. If they passed the 40 days, they were allowed into Sydney. Sydney at that stage was very overcrowded. Sanitation was not good. So if those Spanish influenza or smallpox got in there, it would decimate the population. And it was still a very new city at that stage. So these families would be put off the ship and into quarantine. They were put through a rigorous procedure of showering with carbolic acid soap to remove the top layers of skin, to remove any diseases that may have been there. Of course, today we now know that by exposing that raw new skin, they actually exposed them to the viruses that were present at quarantine station. They also had the chambers where they would put all the clothing that had come from the other country in and put the temperature up, steam them to remove any bacteria or diseases that would have been attached to it. They've now found out that they were 1 or 2 degrees short of actually reaching what they needed, and all that happened was all the ladies' beautiful silks from England were destroyed. It wasn't very popular. So if you became ill during that time, the ill were taken to what's called sick ground, the hospital area, the isolation, the worst of the worst, where they knew you were going to die. They felt that if they put you at the top of the hill, the wind would pass through and remove the miasmas, as they called it. But sadly, many people did die suffering in pain. They would have nurses that would have to be there with them. The doctors would try to keep their distance and send the nurses in to tend to the sick. And uh, even if there was illness at home, like if back home a mother was just dying from something else, they weren't allowed to leave until they had done their 40 days. So to be a nurse or a doctor there, you were sort of signing yourself away from your family for quite some time. There were one particular nurse, Annie Egan, that died very young there from the diseases from looking after the people, and it's thought that her spirit haunts there. But the main one that's very well known is Matron. Matron is still there, afterlife, looking after people who come to Q Station who may be feeling ill. It's been turned into an Accor. I'm not sure if Accor still has it, but beautiful accommodation. There was first class, second class, third class, and if you weren't white, you were put into Asiatics. It didn't matter if you had a first class, second class, or what ticket it was. It was racist. It was horrible, but that was the time. So there are a lot of souls there who never got to start their new life here in Australia or left their children with no parents. We would get EVPs, which is electronic voice phenomena, where you record and you don't hear anything at the time. You play it back and you'll hear voices on there. And we've got these voices of children saying, "My mummy's sick, help mummy." And then we get voices like, or sounds of as people were struggling to breathe. And this is all either residual or intelligent. There were a lot of stories that were made up for tours, but the thing that we used to run there was called Paranormal Investigator, and it was very pure. We would just, whatever happened, happened. If nothing happened, so be it. But it was very generous in giving information and paranormal evidence
Yep.
throughout the time. But there was one particular spot at the hospital where one night we were packing up and we heard a door rattle, and I went, "That's really weird. You heard that?" And he went, "Yeah, I heard that." I said, "Okay, could you do that again, please?" And this door nearly rattled off its hinges, and it was a very still night. And we've gone, "Okay, thank you very much for doing that. Yeah, you must stay here. We're going to go back now to our room." It was, yeah, we had many experiences. There was one where there was a guy who was being a little bit of a, as we call him here in Australia, a dickhead. And he was hiding underneath the bed ready to scare his girlfriend, grab her ankle as she walked past. He had a digital recorder running in the room. I listened back to the recorder. There is a child's voice saying, "Come play with me." I wish he'd known about that at the time. He would have pooped his pants.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mm-hmm.
recognised a playful spirit, obviously.
Right.
But
Ooh.
so many experiences there.
Mm. So one last one, George and Dragon.
Oh, the
Ah,
Georgian
that's
Dragon.
Renata.
The Georgian Dragon was a place that we did a few things in many, many years ago, and it's a tiny little. It was a restaurant at that particular time. It had been accommodation and things in again a very historic area of close to where we live. And we were allowed to play there for a little while. And one particular night we were there and we had another psychic medium with us, and we were working and revealing some things that may well have been hidden for a very long time in that particular place. It had many layers of spirits, and there seemed to be one particular spirit who seemed to be quite in charge of all the rest. And this was the particular spirit that we were connecting with very, very deeply. And there were some things that were revealed that night that made this spirit feel maybe quite uncomfortable. And especially the owner of the place who was there at the time, she started to feel very uncomfortable and said, I really think we should stop the conversation right now. I'm for some reason not feeling good with this.
Mm.
So, of course, we sort of said, of course we will. We closed the whole session down and everything, and, didn't make too much of it, went home. And the next day, I get a phone call at midday with the owner saying to me, get yourself back here very, very quickly. I don't care what you're doing. You need to come back in here because the room that you were working in last night, we cannot enter. If we go through the threshold into that room, we feel sick. My chef who has walked in has just been unwell in the bathroom. And how can we have guests in that room tonight? We've got service when we cannot enter. Whatever you did last night, you better undo. Okay,
Oh God.
so I got in the car and went in. I prepared myself a little bit beforehand because I wasn't quite sure what I was going into, but I thought I'll just grab a few little bits and pieces with me. And so I arrive and they're both standing at the doorway. The owner is crying. She's in tears going, oh, I can't open up today. My business is ruined, all of this. I don't know what you did last night, but you better fix it. All right. Okay. All right. So I've gone in tentatively. I said, leave it with me for a few minutes. And I've gone in quite tentatively and I've stood in the middle of the room and I've gone, I'm not sure whether I offended someone here last night or not. Obviously, I did, especially if you're here and the one that I'm thinking of. I am very, very sorry. I need you to know that we weren't expecting a piece of information to come out. And kind of when I got to that point, there were windows around the area where I was standing. All the windows started to shake violently. Now, there was no wind or breeze or anything. They just shook violently as if that was a threat.
Mm.
And I had to stand my ground and I said, now, you're not going to scare me because I actually just want to apologize to you and say that you need to trust me when I say no information of what we said last night will ever leave this room, and we will destroy all of our recordings. And at that point in time, everything just went flat and died down. So whatever had happened and whatever we raised from the information the night before, it was still such a touchy thing for this particular spirit who felt that he was still in charge of this place. He didn't want anyone else on his realm to know what had happened, and he certainly didn't want any of the information in the real world to come out. It was to be left a secret forever. And so I literally had to say, we will not say a word to anyone about anything, and we will destroy all of our footage. We will get rid of it so it never comes to light.
And this was BA before Anne. Uh, Still to this day, I don't know what happened and I won't ask.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know, but I won't ask out of respect for the pact that she's made.
Yeah, it was something that particularly happened in this person's life that he was involved in, that he really is quite ashamed of and doesn't want anyone to know about it. That's kind of all I'm going to say. So it made him very vulnerable in his position as leader and his ranking among the other spirits that were there, because there were a number of spirits in that particular property that we know of that. yeah, made life interesting for the people that work there. But I left the room and I said, I think I'm done. I think it's good now. And I said, if I need you both to walk in and to see whether the room is good. And they both tentatively very walked in and they said, oh no, it feels very, very different now. It feels quite light. It feels good. And I said, good. It should be fine. If there is anything else, please come and get me again. I will have another chat. But I think we're done. I think we're good. And I explained to the lady there that, whatever we recorded last night must be deleted and we can't show it anywhere. It can't go on the internet or anything. And that's the decision that I made. And I need to keep that pact. And yeah, so that was really, really interesting. That's probably the closest that I've come to being threatened.
Feeling unsafe.
In my years of doing this. Other than that, no, that's about it. So that was really interesting.
Wow. Did you feel like in any way that he wasn't like, he might have been in charge of the other spirits there, but there wasn't like, it wasn't more of like a hierarchy, but not so much a threat? Like he wasn't threatening or holding or dominating the other spirits, but just kind of leading, maybe?
Yeah, very much a hierarchy. I
Spokesperson?
think in that he may, while he was alive, have had a particular position in that place, and the others may have been servants, and so he just wanted to keep it that way. As far as you're concerned, everything will be fine if you just let it go and leave it the way it was. Stop dabbling with this here, because it's not going to end up being good. So
Mm.
yeah, we have found that if you make a promise to anyone in the spirit world, even if it's a kind of a flyaway statement, you need to keep it because they have long memories and they will remember. And so I say to everyone, don't promise anything that you have no desire of keeping because they know. They know.
Right. That's very good advice, actually. Well, ladies, thank you so much for sharing these stories. They have been fun and enlightening and incredibly interesting. Um, but I've really enjoyed having you, and thank you so much for sharing and discussing. And um, maybe if you get some more things in the future, we could come back and talk again because I've really
I'd
enjoyed
love to.
all of
Absolutely
it.
love
Yeah.
to. We love to talk, as you can see.
We'd love to come back after our trip to Salem. That would be awesome.
That would be, yeah, that would be really cool to hear about the interactions and just your thoughts and experience because I think you guys
Mm,
are gonna have an awesome and fun trip. So
We will.
definitely looking forward to hearing more about that. So yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thank
thank
you
you.
so much again,
Thank you,
and
Whitney. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you, and safe travels. And we will definitely see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye,
Thank
everyone.